Okay, real quick, we will be going into the first session of the day. That is the micro, small, and medium enterprises session. But to kick off this session, I would want to usher in via our online platforms the MD, that's the Managing Director, Bank of Industry Nigeria, in person of Olukayode Pitan, who happens to also be the former executive director of Unity Bank PLC and also a former managing director of First Interstate Bank PLC. He would be ably represented by the General Manager, Small and Medium Enterprises, and also former MD Unity Bank in person, Rislanudeen Mohammed. Also to join us as a speaker, we would have the Chairperson of the Women in Management, the head coverage of Rand Merchant Bank Nigeria, and Chairperson of WIMBPS, that is the Women in Management Business and Public Service Executive Council, who also doubles as the former executive principal with Standard Chartered Bank Nigeria. I'm talking about no other person than Ngover, Ihyembe, Nwankwo. Also to join us as a speaker, we have Yann Makosso, Bayonne, manager, entrepreneur, and policy analyst, Congolese, Brazzaville. He is an expert in development policies in Africa. To also join us as a speaker, we have Adaeze Udensi, the executive director, Titan Trust Bank Limited, a former board member, Heritage Banking Co. Limited, and also a fellow Institute of Credit Administration of Nigeria. We also have one more speaker, Rawya, Mansour, the founder Ramsco Egypt, and also founder Organic Agriculture of Social International Solidarity in the Principal of Monaco. He is one of the 100 most influential African women. Ladies and gentlemen, to help us push through this session, we would want to also recognize via online platforms the Director of Education and Governance Research, Center for the Study of the Economies of Africa, CSEA, in person, Dr. Adedeji Adeniran. Over to you, Dr. Adedeji.
Thank you very much, Moses. Thanks for that nice introduction. And good morning, viewers, and good morning to our panelists. I'm happy to be handling this session where we'll be discussing this important issue about the role of SMEs in Africa. The governor of Imo State, Governor Uzodimma, actually set the pace for the conversation when he highlighted the key issues that COVID-19 has raised about the African economy. I mean, because of the lockdown and all the process that went and all health responses that the economy put in place during the COVID-19, as a response to the COVID-19, a lot of issues were, a lot of places were affected, and SMEs is one of the sectors that were mostly affected. There were shutdown, there were a lot of border closure, and there are a lot of economic responses that affected this important sector. But even at the same time, I mean, we look at some opportunities that are emerging. We know of digital economy, whereby a lot of people move from the brick and mortar stores into digital platforms. And these are kind of the potential and future for the African economy as we look towards to how do we generate inclusive economic growth for everyone in Africa. So in this conversation, we'll be looking at how can we use SMEs in the recovery process and to ensure that the SMEs in Africa are part of what we can do for economic development. So just as a quick set of rules, please, if you are not speaking, just help us mute your mic such that you don't interfere with others. And secondly, when I pose questions to us, please let's try and answer within 2 minutes. I mean, so each speaker will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. So we can quickly jump into the conversation. And I'm going to start with Dr. Mohammed from the Bank of Industry. As someone who has worked a lot and look at what has been happening to SMEs in Nigeria and in Africa at large, we can say that before COVID-19, there is a lot of potential that we have about SMEs, but we have not realized this potential. I mean, we have said that this should be an engine of growth and job creation and poverty reduction agenda for the continent, but we have not realized this in terms of the full potential of SMEs in Africa. What are the challenges? I mean, pre-COVID, the COVID-19, that are affecting SMEs in Africa? Dr. Mohammed, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, and good morning to viewers. I think you have rightly stated the fact that SMEs, even pre-COVID, were challenged with plethora of problems. But having said that, we know that COVID-19 has further accentuated those challenges. Virtually, the economies of Africa have all shrunk into deep recession or potential recession. The biggest economies in Africa, South Africa, have experienced Q2 2020 GDP contraction of 17.1%. Nigeria has experienced a contraction of 6.1%, noting the fact that almost 40 to 50% of business of contribution to GDP in those African countries is from SMEs. Most of the business, over 90%, it has been documented, are SME businesses. They contribute in terms of employment generation, in terms of wealth creation, and in terms of innovation. Now, in Nigeria, for example, coming down to Nigeria, we have about 41.5 documented SMEs. Most of them are now challenged. During COVID-19, most of those small businesses have been locked up, and most of them are even getting into extinction. But thank God there are some policy measures being put up in place by government, initially by the central bank, now by the federal government of Nigeria, all the intervention funds, as well as the survival fund that came in recently from the Federal Ministry of Industries. But before then, the key challenges that has been embedded in SMEs is finance. The International Finance Corporation has projected that almost 331 billion funding gap was already in place pre-COVID. And why have those challenges not been able to be addressed? How have they been manifested? Number one, there are a problem of unstructured nature of the small businesses, which makes them very difficult to access finance. Number two, high cost of doing business, high interest rates. Number two, duplicity of taxations. Number three, issues relating to credit history, which makes it difficult for lenders to assess small businesses and grant them loans. Recall that this scoring system, credit scoring system, started in the United States since 1941. So everybody's credit history is known. You can be able to easily assess and rate, which is something very difficult in Nigerian context. And in addition to that, all those small funds that could have supported small businesses are inaccessible to those small businesses. So in a nutshell, basically it's finance disaggregated into issues related because of the unstructured nature of their businesses, high interest rate, lack of credit history, non-availability of suitable collateral requirement, and which dovetails into lack of bankable loan applications, poor business plans, lack of trained manpower, poor bookkeeping on the side of small businesses. So there are plethora of challenges that need to be addressed. And I believe in Nigerian context, there are several forums in which all those issues are being addressed in such a way that we can be able to gain some optimality in terms of the benefits expected from small businesses. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for that point. I mean, you highlighted that finance is the major bottleneck facing SMEs in Africa. But I mean, let me jump to Mrs. Mansour from Egypt. Do you share similar experiences if you are to look at the top three challenges facing SMEs in your country, and project it to Africa, what will you say? Your microphone is mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank
good
you.
morning. Good morning from cloudy London. I share the same idea, the same opinion with the previous speaker that there is a problem of finance, but the main problems of small SMEs that they are all not known, or not. The country doesn't know exactly the amount of SMEs we have. But in the field of agriculture, I would think that cooperatives or contract farming would be the issue that we can use now, and especially that everything now is by internet, and that says to link both the market and the market and the farmers to the sales. We should have like sort of governmental or maybe cooperatives or a collection of smallest SMEs in the field of agriculture, which I am working in, where the biggest demand we have in surpassing, or the biggest problem that happened during the COVID-19 is being autonomous in the food. So there must be a sort of cooperative and helping small SMEs with small finances from banks and also from the cooperatives of the government or the agricultural cooperatives, where they will be issued and they would be legalized and known exactly what are the farmers, what is the rule, what is each farmer planting, and how can he market his goods internally and externally, because planting in Africa now could be a big booster for the economy.
Thank you for that response. Let me just move to Mr. Yann. You are from Congo, Brazzaville. And stakeholders from our panelists from Nigeria and from Egypt has emphasized the role of finance. For Congo, Brazzaville, which is a low-income country, do you still share the same experience? I mean, if these middle-income countries are complaining finance, so how could this be in low-income countries? I mean, if you can speak to that, please. Your mic, please.
Okay, you hear me? I can start? Okay.
Hello, Mr. Yann.
Yes, excuse me, sorry. Thank you for your question. And I share the same idea.
I think we have network problem with her. Maybe we will come back to him soon. But let me move quickly to Dr. Sorry, Mr. Yann. Hello? Okay, can I move to Dr. Adaeze? You as a financial expert, I mean, someone working within the financial industry, a lot of comments issues that people have raised now points to the fact that finance is a major issue. But we have the financial system there in supporting the real sector. So what has been the factors that are causing this disconnect between the financial sector and the real sector? Dr. Adaeze.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Dr. Adaeze.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much for having me this morning. I'm happy the conversation really right now is going on around the MSMEs. the lower part of the basket, which is where the bulk of the population of Africa sits. And the success of whatever we're doing now will determine the success of Africa now and in the near future. The problem that this category of people have is based to the problem they have in accessing credit, because that's the problem they have, is due to a whole lot of things that the first speaker talked about when he spoke. He talked about poor credit scoring system. He talked about poor record keeping, poor education, no bookkeeping, no accounting records, absolutely zero credit information. These are the things that a banker or a financier needs to be able to take a credit decision on anybody. And this gap has so become glaring in a place like Nigeria that the central bank has pretty much stepped in. Right now, the central bank has a whole lot of programs, a whole lot of direct interventions that is going on right now to address the needs of that sector. The central bank is also ensuring single-digit loans because the high interest loans was a huge problem for them. These businesses are so small, they can't afford to pay 16, 17, 18, 21%. So the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Bank of Industry, and all other agencies of government have come together in Nigeria, and they're doing a great job. There are all kinds of funds available to businesses in this category at 5%, and 5% max. And that has gone a long way to help. Now these businesses now also understand that digital selling, being on the online platform, is not meant for big businesses alone. Small businesses need to be able to sell their products online. If you go to the social media pages, you will notice an uptick in the number of small businesses selling one thing or the other. Because the small businesses were used to go into their shops, open their shops, people will come and buy. With the COVID, we're all locked in and they had to sell. And a lot of businesses, let me mention this, a lot of small businesses grew within this period because a lot of small business people realized fast that we can close this gap through the online sales. And they made sure their selling was clean, neat, truthful, honest, and on time. And those businesses have grown. So yes, we have a lot of MSMEs that are struggling or are struggling post-COVID. There are so many more that have grown post-COVID. And that's about having that mentality of how do I take advantage of this situation that may not be looking good? What is the good in this situation? Some people saw that good, keyed in on it very quickly, and their businesses have been on a good trajectory.
Thank you, Dr. Adaeze. I mean, you mentioned the important role that the digital economy has spring up a lot of opportunities for SMEs and how we can hone up this space for sustained gains and economic growth. Thank you for that. So let me just quickly go back to Mr. Yann. You have to share your experience from Congo, Brazzaville. I mean, if middle income countries could be looking at finance as a major issue, what is the condition in low income countries? Because I mean, these are the major kind of areas we need to look into. Low income countries, how are they faring in terms of finance and other challenges that are facing SMEs within their own context? Thank you. If you can quickly jump on that.
Okay, thank you for your question. I'm sorry for connection. And,
Mr. Yann?
Yes, you understand me?
Yeah.
You hear me? I can start?
I can hear him. I can hear him.
Hello?
I can hear him.
Yes, okay.
We can hear you.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you. Maybe you can have the videos if it is network issue.
Dr. Yann, you can go ahead.
I don't know why. I don't understand. What problem?
We can hear you loud and clear. Please do go ahead.
Hello? Okay. So I think we are still having problem from that end. So I think I would bring in to the conversation Ms. Ngover, who also happens to be a practitioner in the financial industry. So we talked about, the conversation has dwelled on the fact that financial sector identification system are the key issues. And as an economics, when you talked about problem, you also think that when the problem is an opportunity. And we talked about a lot of fintech and the rest as kind of solution to some of these issues. Can you share with us what you think role of fintech can be in ensuring that linkages between financial sector and real sector is breached? I mean, we cannot have a financial sector that declare each profit, and we cannot have a real sector that complains about lack of funding. I mean, you can't actually reconcile the two arguments. I would like you to do justice to that.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone, and thank you for having me on the panel. I think the first thing is, I personally think that there's a big misconception when you're thinking about the access to finance being a big barrier. I think what it is, the barrier is access to capital. And it's important to note that when you're looking at the capital conversation, it's equity and it's debt. So I thought I should just mention that out there. And I think it's not only being able to access funding. What I've seen and from my research is that in addition to not being able to go in and get money, there's also the issue of how do you financially manage the resources that you have. So what you find is that as SMEs start off, they get money from friends and family, and they're able to operate. But as they try to grow and scale up, they become a victim of that financing because they can't get enough capital to put into the working capital cycle to then get bigger. So there's a big problem beyond just getting access to loans. There's also sort of access to loans, then there's them being able to manage what they have. And governments and banks and institutions need to partner together to help. And that's what we've seen countries that have done well, so does Japan. They create these hubs, these SME hubs, which don't only provide money, they also provide information, they assist with driving innovation. And when you have all these three things in sync, then you can really see SMEs grow. But to go to your question around fintech specifically, I think it's important for us to know that across the continent, not just Nigeria, internet and broadband penetration is still not where it needs to be. So any solutions that we want to put in place to get SMEs to scale cannot be wholly dependent on technology that requires high level access to these things. So for me, and when I look at fintechs, it's about them applying blue sky thinking. At the beginning of this session, I think the anchor talked about Africa for Africa by Africans. It's about us figuring out in our own peculiar circumstances what will work best. So in some respects, you will have fintechs doing the partnerships to help banks to create credit history, because these individuals are either buying credit or already have some sort of financial intermediation in their businesses or in their lives. But you have many people who may not. You've got people, I think it was Ms. Mansour that talked about farmers. You've got sort of very subsistence level farmers who may not have formal access to capital. So for me, fintechs will be around with the tools they already have in the small cooperatives in which they're existing, in the small market clusters. How can fintechs come at that level, and how can we extract information? So how do we know how many people are actually farming, what products are they doing, and make it easy for them to provide that information without making it too difficult? So I definitely think that fintechs have a role. but it's important for us to scale it across different levels so that we don't leave any part of our population outside of the growth initiatives.
Thanks about that. I mean, thanks for that very valuable contribution. I think I want to go back to Mr. Yann about the conversation around what is happening in low-income countries. And if you can also contribute to what the last panelist mentioned about the role of fintech. Are we having this kind of momentum around fintech also in low-income countries? If you can contribute to that, Mr. Yann.
Okay, I'll apologize for this situation. I don't know why. I have many problems with my connection. Please, can you repeat your question? Because I don't understand.
So it's a general question to all the panelists, which is pre-COVID-19, what has been the kind of challenges SMEs are facing? But if you can dwell on the issue around low-income countries and the specific challenges in that context.
Okay, so I share the same ideas with my colleague, because in my country I have the same problem, the same issues in financing of SMEs, but it's not the unique, not the alone problem, because I think one of the main problem in the integration and capacity for SMEs to call the pandemic of COVID-19 is also harmonization and optimization fiscal framework.
Okay.
Because you have many
what do you mean by that?
fiscal framework. I don't understand. I don't listen.
So what do you mean by the harmonization of fiscal framework?
Yes. I explain you my idea. In fact, in my country, for example, and many countries of center of Africa, you have many institutions give many critters for one SMEs. You have Ministry of Economic and Ministry of Small and Middle Enterprise give the different criteria for the same SMEs, and you can create your business, and you must respond to the two institutions. It's some complicated for a small enterprise, because you don't grow, and many institutions give you and want you give a response to what I can say, to the fiscal response. That I think you have the problematics of finance, but you have also the problematic of fiscal situation in different states. For that, what you say?
So, Mr. Yann, I mean, thanks for those points in terms of, I mean, the 2 points you highlighted. Finance is a major issue, and also fiscal space is being constrained for them to optimally operate. But I want to move the conversation to COVID-19 crisis and how it has affected operation and performance of SMEs in Africa. And I think I want to start with Ms. Mansour. In your own view, what has been the major kind of setback that COVID-19 represents for SMEs?
For my opinion,
sorry, Mr. Yann. I think we've jumped to Mrs. Mansour. We'll come back to you soon. Thank you. Your mic is, we can't hear you.
Trying to.
We can't hear you, please. Hello, hello, Miss Mansour, we can't hear you. Your mic is mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Well, the major problems that we faced, like for instance in Egypt after the COVID-19, is the fright and the small SMEs. I would say that during the COVID-19, our government has offered a lot of finance for small SMEs for around 5% also is the interest rate, and especially to women. But I see throughout Africa, there is a little that has been done for the funding green economies. And I think that green funding and having a sustainable plan of innovations and of capacity building and connecting with the small farmers is a very, very important issue to have the goods and the market, the market for them to market their goods. I think rural development is a very low, has taken very low development in all of Africa. And I think now is the time for it by digital economy and by connecting with all those small farmers. And if there's a big organization throughout Africa for the needs and for the export also of goods from Africa to Europe, I think this would be the best time for it, especially that now we have a lot of shutdowns in many countries. One of the major problem is the paying back also of debts, because like you give your goods to the supermarkets, by the time you get them, everything is being delayed. So finance is also a very important issue, but I think there must be more of a governmental or a green fund for taking this further down throughout Africa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that very apt response. I think I would move to Dr. Mohammed. As someone that works with the Bank of Industry in Nigeria, one of your roles and function is to help sustain SMEs. And during COVID-19, this industry or sector specifically has been badly affected. You will recall during lockdown, most of them could not open. And so what are the news, what are the stories about COVID-19 that you are hearing from the street in terms of how SMEs in Nigeria and Africa have they been affected? If you can respond to that, please. Dr. Mohammed.
Okay, thank you very much. In brief, we can, in summary, state that as a way of a background, most African economies, especially the two largest economies, Nigeria and South Africa, were having a very slow crawling GDP growth rate prior to COVID-19. So at the advent of COVID-19, there were challenges in taking immediate decisions. Credit to the Central Bank of Nigeria, they came up with a plethora of policy measures immediately as a kind of fire brigade immediate approach to dealing with some of those challenges. The 50 billion fund for small individual businesses and the 100 billion support fund for healthcare, as well as the 1.1 trillion package for SMEs, in addition to additional 1.3 trillion that is supposed to come through the deposit money banks. Specifically, for Bank of Industry, what we did in the immediate was, first, we reduced interest rate on all our SMEs from 10% to 8%. We also granted 3 months moratorium on repayment of principal to enable some of those small businesses truly adjust to the challenges that they face. Because if you insist on all those businesses making repayments as based on the existing previous arrangement, it may be very difficult, if not impossible. You will only end up creating bad loans because most of those businesses were locked up. So where will they get the cash flow to be able to repay those loans? So basically, that's what we did. And in addition to that, we also ramped up our support for what we call graduate support program, as well as youth support programs. Collectively, we have invested over 2 billion in terms of support to those businesses, small businesses, startups mostly with zero collateral, mostly young graduates with a lot of initiatives, but lack of collateral. We have been supporting them to that extent. From 2015 to date, Bank of Industry has supported small businesses, over 15,000 small businesses, to the tune of over 154 billion. So in our own small way, we have done a lot. And thankfully, we are now managing the federal government initiative of the 75 billion Naira Survival Fund, which is similar to the 60 billion, which is similar to what in the advanced countries did, the kind of a furlough leave arrangement, 3 months payment of salaries, as well as 15 billion, that is for 60 billion, as well as the 15 billion guaranteed offtake for businesses that are tied to healthcare. So basically,
hello, Dr. Mohammed. Can I ask a question regarding that? I mean, you talked about the government special intervention. How would you, if you can speak to the general kind of request you are getting? Is it overwhelming, or you are not getting in terms of request as you expected? And what are the kind of how are you reaching out to vulnerable population like youths, like rural dwellers with this initiative?
Yeah, you see, mostly we reach out to those young people through the internet. Thankfully, most of them, they have smartphones, and most of them are well knowledgeable in terms of technology. So it is much easier to reach out to them through using technology than the general public. And the system has been truly successful in terms of getting substantial number of them coming in, putting in several requests, and we have been really supporting them.
Thank you about that. Sorry, I want to move to Mrs. Ngover. If you can, I mean, we are talking about how has COVID-19 affected SMEs in Africa. And we talked about SMEs as kind of that black box that we don't fully understand. Now, before the COVID-19, as you rightly mentioned, there has been issue of financing and funding. How big would this issue be? I mean, during COVID-19 and post-COVID-19, I mean, we are still in the middle of COVID-19. How big would this issue be going forward? Do you think we can navigate this financial issue, or do you think it's going to be amplified?
I think it's going to be amplified because, as Mr. Mansour mentioned, the fact is that cash flows were significantly and continue to be significantly impacted. People are seeing a reduction in sales volumes. They're seeing a elongation of cycles. So just bringing money back in to the system has been quite difficult. So I think you will certainly see that people continue to experience stress, particularly because they've had a very stressful 3-4 months of lockdowns. And even though things are gradually getting back to some kind of normalcy, we're now seeing a second wave coming out. And then that impact of the stress earlier in the year will carry on, in my opinion, at least for the next year or two. Now, in terms of support, I think we certainly are seeing various countries, particularly Nigeria, step up to the plate with a number of support initiatives across the government institutions, as well as financial institutions, and even individuals. So we're seeing a lot more focus, for example, on angel investing. I see a lot of that going on within my personal networks. And I'm sure many people also are seeing it, where people are now sort of focusing on alternative ways to invest capital that they have in their pockets. Instead of putting it in banks, because we're in a low yield environment, they're now looking at ways to support businesses by providing equity where possible. Now, the studies show that most SMEs are more comfortable with what we call patient capital. So at the stage of their growth, debt, particularly high interest debt, is not attractive because it's very difficult for them to really make any sort of profit if you're paying double-digit interest rates, which is where it really is the intervention funds, or it's equity through private equity, through investments, or through just handouts from friends and family. But certainly, I think finance is a major constraint and will continue to be a major constraint until we get over this sort of 24-month window.
Okay. Okay. We're trying to sort out the interconnectivity issues we have with Mr. Adedeji. Hopefully he will be joining us. Dr. Adedeji Adeniran, I hope you will join us. Okay, he's back.
I'm sorry, I'm back, sorry. Actually, I can listen to her at the background, but it was not very strong. But I mean, thanks for that response in terms of the problem of finance could be amplified. But also, I mean, we need to ask the question, government responses. Is there anything that we think government needs to do more going forward? Because I mean, government needs all the help it can get in terms of ideas to navigate these challenges. So I think I would start from Dr. Adaeze. How would you assess government response? Are there things that you think government has not been doing that you think we can add to the policy menu that we are currently implementing and experimenting with?
Hi. Oh, good. I was mute. So I'll say the government has done quite a lot. The government has been quite responsive. And you know that the medium through which the government could intervene in all these MSMEs is also the banks. And the banks also have their peculiar problems. The banks are also dealing with MSME-like COVID-inflicted pain. And so the government has found themselves managing both sides while managing its own financial crisis too, and trying to get the whole wheel roll, and carry everybody along. So I wouldn't say that the government is not doing something. They're doing much more than I've ever seen any government do in the past till date. We can simply work on improving what we are doing now to get more efficient at doing it, gathering information so that we can improve the information asymmetric, improving legal formation, like reducing the problems and the knots that come with setting up MSME, legal considerations. Whatever the setup costs, we need to just get those things out of the way so that when these businesses come out and decide, okay, we want to get registered, it should be seamless. It should happen within an hour or two. Nobody should be trying to register a business for 1 week. It's not right. It shouldn't be happening in Africa today. And so we can do something about it. Government needs to help us in improving the collateral registration process, maybe by having an act to empower that process. We now have in Nigeria the BVN. The BVN has helped a lot. So you notice the issue of bad loans and the professional borrowers and the defaulters has come down, because with your BVN, you're going to be trapped anywhere you go. in Nigeria. And so that problem is reasonably being sorted out with a proper act to enforce collateral registration process and credit scoring. It's going to just make things move smoothly for us. These are the things that come straight up off the top of my head that we could do immediately, yes, to get things going smoother for MSMEs.
Thank you. Thanks for that response in terms of what government has been doing very well. And I mean, so thanks. I mean, what government can do more in order to help ensure things work very well. Now, I would go to Mrs. Ngover. If you can, so there are anticipation of what kind of recovery should we expect for SMEs? I mean, there are a lot of people talks about different shape of recovery, a fast-paced recovery, a V-shape, or a slower one, which would be U-shape, or even an L-shape, whereby we might not expect any more recovery. Which one will you bet on in terms of the prospect of SMEs post-COVID-19 going forward, given that what we have been seeing so far?
It's a very interesting question. If I had a crystal ball, I would certainly be able to answer. I think whatever the shape is, what I really would hope for is that it is sustained. So I personally think that we will see growth. I think we will see the growth sort of, to my mind, start off a bit slow and then hopefully gradually pick up as things get back to normalcy. I also think that with the lessons that governments and businesses have learned around building resilience, creating buffers, supporting businesses, once we get back to that normalcy, my hope anyways, that we will see things, almost sort of rocket upwards. But as I said in the beginning, it has to sort of remain sustained. So all the lessons that we've learned from this experience, we have to carry them with us and continue to support. And then in that way, we'll see the continent truly prosper.
Thank you. I mean, the lessons we've drawn from COVID-19, we need to sustain it, and we need to use it as a springboard for sustained gains. So let me move to Mrs. Mansour. Talking about gains, we know that informal sector is quite huge in Africa. I mean, we know that SMEs, I mean, you yourself mentioned that we don't even know the numbers of SMEs because a lot of them operate in the informal sector. And for that reason, we looked at what has happened much more recently, that informality might actually have some benefit, but it also has some cost. If government will be able to reach out to you, they need to know you are there and they need to know what you are doing. So do you think this kind of lack of identification that did not enable government to reach out to many that they would have reached out to, and also the transition towards digital economy, do you see this as likely to lead to transformation from informality to formality for many of the SMEs in Africa?
Well, I think in the informal sectors of the small SMEs, with the need of, as mother is the need of invention, I think if this is turned formally through a digital connection and also with a digital economy and making a field for them where they could access the markets through the digital, definitely it will turn from an informal sector to a formal sector, together with offering finance, innovation, and incubation to those small SMEs. I think this could be a chance, an opportunity that should be taken. It's a risk. We're at risk now, but I think it's an opportunity that definitely has to be, the governments in Africa have to take an opportunity of by connecting with their small SMEs in order to develop their economies. And doing it through a proper strategy of finance and a proper strategy of innovation, capacity building, and marketing. Thank you.
Thank you so much about that. So let me just move to Dr. Mohammed. I mean, governments can use COVID-19 also as an opportunity. And one of the opportunities, like I mentioned, is transition towards formality, which means we reduce the level of informality. There has been a major problem in a country like Nigeria. By some estimate, I mean, we know that between 50 to 60% of Nigeria economy are operating within the informal sector. And that has a lot of implications for tax generation and for even fiscal policy in order to harness some of the opportunities that COVID-19 has actually availed in terms of better identification system and transition towards the digital economy. What do you think government approaches to this?
Okay, thank you very much. I think if I can recollect very well, by official records, there are almost 42 million registered SMEs, as documented by the government regulator, small and medium-sized development industries, and 41.5 million. If you multiply it by even 3, you can imagine the number of people that SMEs are really taking care of. We know that at the advent of the COVID-19, challenges came up in place. All countries locked themselves up, and for Nigeria, as an example, that is heavily import dependent. For most of the inputs that are required for the SMEs, for large enterprises, there were challenges in terms of supplies. So the opportunity that can clearly come into bear is the need for countries like Nigeria, all African countries, to look inwards and see how we can be able to integrate our economy.
Okay, we're still talking about micro, small, and medium enterprises session, which is being anchored by Dr. Adedeji. I hope I will be able to get Dr. Rislanudeen back online. Okay.
He's back online.
Yes, I am. Am I just talking to myself?
No, we could hear a little bit, but maybe if you can recap the point you are trying to make. Yes.
The key point that I was trying to make is, for official record, there are about 42 million, 41.5 million based on the real data that I have, as documented by SMEDAN, meaning that if you take just 41.5 million times 3, you can think about, just imagine about 120 million people, million Nigerians rely on SMEs, to survive. And when all countries lock themselves up, both developing countries and developed countries locked themselves up because of the COVID, there were challenges in terms of supplies. Notwithstanding the fact that even the SMEs were also locked up, but there were disruptions, supply disruptions. And the opportunity that really comes into bear in that context is for Nigeria and indeed African countries to look inwards and further integrate our economy integrate our economies so that we can be able to support each other in terms of critical supplies, as much as minimize the impact of imports from particularly China. At present, most of our inputs for SMEs, for large enterprises, are imported from China. And economies cannot survive with such kind of, key risk challenges. So clearly, there is an opportunity for the economy to integrate and look inwards and support each other so that we can be able to, minimize the impact of what we have seen during COVID, the critical supply challenges.
Disruption. Thank you. I mean, you laid the point very clearly that COVID-19 led to global supply chain disruption. And if we look inward, those are kind of opportunity we can harness for development of SMEs. So let me just ask Dr. Adaeze, this question. What roles do you think private sector, communities, and business membership organizations, BMOs, what roles do you think they can play in supporting government as we look at digital transformation and transition from informality to formal sector for most of these people in this industry?
Thank you very much for that very brilliant question. There's a whole lot that still needs to be done and can be done and is being done to move this forward and consolidate on what is already going on. You come to Africa as a continent, the inter-continent, within the continent, intra-continent export is really not moving anywhere. And each and every one of us has a role to play there. For this reason, the African Continental Free Trade Area has been set up. It's supposed to have about 55 member states or so, trying to create and established a free trade area to create a single continent-wide market for goods and services to promote the movement of goods and capital among ourselves within our country. We need to drive and mine all the benefit that lies here. To date, I understand about 30 countries have signed up. We need many more, all the remaining countries to sign up. They need to put this on a fast track, because if this is put on a fast track, within Africa, a cocoa farmer in Ibadan can export his cocoa to Liberia. He can export his cocoa to Ghana if the Ghana export needs more cocoa from whoever their supplier is within Africa. If we can mine and harness this strength within us, I can assure you that most of the damage that we take, the hits we take as African SMEs and small businesses from the bigger continents will douse and Africa will grow. So I think, first of all, we need to start looking inwards. Inwards, for me, the fastest item on the table is this, our African Continental Free Trade Area. We need to bring this back on the border and make this become a life practicable working document for the continent. That's for me the fastest. Every other thing I'm going to tell you is going to be the same textbook things. You're reading, everybody is reading, everybody is talking about it. It's just the same, we can read it out. The real practical thing is that Africa needs to look inwards. We now need to sit down and lock our fences and get ourselves sufficient before we allow outsiders coming. That needs to happen now.
Yeah, I think you've laid out an important conversation, the African Continental Free Trade. This is an agreement that is expected to commence on 1st of January 2021, and we are looking forward to it as a continent. And I mean, what you want to hope for is that it will be part of the recovery effort post-COVID. So I think this is one conversation we should have. But before we get to the issue of Continental Free Trade Agreement, I think I want to ask Ms. Ngover about the issue of disparity in terms of both interventions. So when you look at it, digital kind of inclusion, there is a lot of exclusion of women. If you look at financial inclusion, I mean, it's biased against women. And you want to ask, crisis sometimes amplify some of this inequality. And it is about how you respond to this crisis in terms of policy framing that will determine maybe we amplify the problem or we are going to actually address the parts of the holistic package in responses. If you will look at what we have done so far in terms of government, private sector responses to COVID-19 shock, will you say women or the vulnerable group in general How sensitive are these responses to them? And what do you think more can we do in order to ensure that we bridge the gap in economic inequalities and the rest?
So I think a lot of the interventions that we're seeing have actually been quite democratic. So they've been sort of gender neutral and applied to women, men, old, young. And for that, I think we need to applaud the various governments. I think there's something that had been said earlier, which is about the informal sector. I think one of the major barriers that I see is that a lot of the women-owned businesses still operate at either micro or small scale, and a number of them are still in the informal sector. So it's about bringing them into the formal sector, because only when they come into the formal sector can we get data on the problems that they have. Can we then create solutions that are homegrown and can really speak to the challenges that they have? But I think a lot of the communication around formalizing business has always been around tax. And so it's always been seen as a take, as opposed to a give. So the narration around trying to get businesses to become less informal has to be one where there's a give and take, where businesses see that there is an upside to being part of the formal economy, either an upside in the sense that they can get access to finance, like we had discussed with BOI and government interventions, or an upside into how do we incubate, how do we create innovation. So I think that's what is missing in the conversation about leapfrogging women-owned businesses and the vulnerable, because unless we get close enough to understand really what is plaguing them, we can sit here, read lots of theses, read lots of books, but that real blue sky shift that we're looking for, because right now we can't continue to grow along the traditional growth curves of value and cost. What we really need to do now is to leapfrog all of that and do a massive blue ocean shift. But you can't do that without information. So that for me is key. It's about information, it's about communication and consistency. So if we recognize that women and the vulnerable sector of society are missing out, then we have to be intentional. How do we get to know them? How do we get them to trust? And a key element of that trust for me is one, the red tape. We need to bring down the bureaucracy, the red tape. And the second, like I talked about earlier, is we always have the traditional trade bodies. And when I say traditional trade bodies, it's the Market Women Association, it's the farmers unit, it's the clusters, we need to go back there and get them to help us to get our message out about the changes that we want to see and want to help them with. But more importantly, we need to use those associations to then drive best practice, drive innovation, support with incubation, and then push the finance down and then get the repayments back up.
Okay, thanks so much for that response. And I think we can go on to the one very important point that we need to discuss. I mean, when you discuss SMEs in Africa, there is no way you would not want to highlight African Continental Free Trade Agreement. In Nigeria, for instance, the biggest economy and the most populous, there has been apprehension about both signing and ratification of Continental Free Trade Agreements. But my panelists here are saying that it is the way forward for us. So I would like to ask Dr. Adaeze, why are you so optimistic about how the impact of Continental Free Trade Agreement will be for the SMEs? What are the kind of challenges should we look forward to, and how should government prepare them in order to benefit from this? Please, I want us to actually be strict with the 2 minutes timing now. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Yes, thank God. Thank you very much. What is the alternative? I think we should add at the end of your question, what is the alternative for Africa? What is the alternative for Africa? What is the alternative for the small African countries? We are only as strong as our weakest link. And that is the truth. And the only way to make sure that in this growth, we handhold each other, is that we need to open up the space. We've seen what the lessons that have been learned from the EU. So we've taken those notes out. We're not jumping to that scale. But my question every time this conversation comes up is, what is our alternative? Stay locked in? For a country like Nigeria, for example, we've got enough to push out as export, excessively enough to push out as export. Look at what happened to the semi-border area with the border closure. That country practically went down. That is income to Nigeria shut down. These are opportunities shut down. Yes, there are loopholes, there's corruption, there are leakages. These are things that we can sort out, but we cannot throw away the baby with the bathwater because the bathwater is dirty. That's why each time this conversation comes, I say, please, I want to learn what is the alternative to this way forward. There's really, the real is a painful start, but it's a way forward that we just have to face together.
So, the point is very clear. It's like we don't have alternative. But I want to jump to Dr. Mohammed. If you look at it, if we don't have alternative, what do you think government is, why government is treading carefully? What do you think we stand to lose from joining this important trade treaty among African countries? And what do you think government can do to prepare SMEs? Because it's about preparation in a way.
Yes.
If there's no benefit, you could prepare in order to actually turn whatever costs or negatives into that positive. What do you think we need to do? In order to ensure that we join this moving train of development.
I think if I can rephrase your question, it should have been having agreed, because at least in this forum we agree that after is a novel idea, and it's something that all African countries need to accept. Thankfully, Nigeria has also accepted. What I should rather expect to ask is, how do we mitigate the negative impact? Some of the negative.
But we've not rectified.
So, sorry, we will by the grace of God. We will. Probably all African countries, we will, because like the last speaker said, we truly do not have alternative. If you look at most of our neighbors, we are surrounded by the Francophone countries. What is the volume of actual formal trade between us and those countries? And what is the volume of formal trade between those countries and France, for example? If you look at it, you can see clearly that informal trade has been historical because of our history of relationship pre-colonial time, but formal trade truly does not even exist. What is happening in the trade, talking about Benin Republic or particularly Benin Republic or Niger or Cameroon or Chad, is about smuggling. And when you look at it in that context, after, we'll do away with that because everything will be formalized. And clearly the rules of origin will be respected. And to that extent, there is nothing to fear. What SMEs in Nigeria need to do is we need to ensure that our SMEs are well prepared in terms of capacity to compete. We are a very big economy, the largest economy in Africa. If we don't prepare ourselves, yes, I agree with you, the benefits will go to other countries. But if you prepare ourselves, the greatest beneficiary will be Nigeria, because we will be the biggest exporter to African continent. And having said that, even those other countries stand to benefit more, because they also have the capacity now to legally export goods to other African countries, specifically Nigeria, which is a very big market. We don't need to go through smuggling and so on and so forth. The other thing that Nigerian government need to ensure that it fortifies is the security arrangement. You know, post-Libya, there are a lot of small arms, you know, going around African countries, and that has accentuated the level of insecurity, especially across the Sahel region in Nigerian context, across northern Nigeria, the Boko Haram issue and so on. What Nigeria need to do, because if the first solution to a problem is for one to appreciate the problem, understand the context of the problem. We have understood that there is that problem. How do we mitigate it? Because of that problem does not in any way mean that we should throw away a novel idea like AFTA. What we need to do is to, because when you discuss this with most people, the major issue that they raise is the security issue, minus even the economic issue of some countries bringing in goods from Europe or China, and into Nigeria as relabeling them, you know, without respecting the rule of origin and so on. That is not even the main issue. As far as most government or officials are concerned, the issue of security. But we have understood that there is that problem. We need to get over it. We need to solve it, because if we don't solve it, even in Nigerian context, there are other countries that will never benefit. Countries like Niger, countries like Mali, countries like Senegal. They all have
Dr. Mohammed.
Challenges. Yes.
Yeah, thank you about that point. Just to notify that we are rounding up soon. So I will quickly go to Ms. Mansour in Egypt. I mean, Egypt has been one of the country leaders in Africa, country that's also leading African Continental Free Trade Agreement. But I also know that COVID is very quite prominent player in the Middle East and in the Maghreb region. And so what are the implications for Egypt of joining African Continental Free Trade Agreement? What would be the likely benefit, especially for SMEs in the region, in the Maghreb region, with this kind of initiatives? If you can speak to that quickly. Your microphone is mute.
I think as Dr. Adaeze Udensi mentioned before, free trade is a very important issue for small SMEs and post-COVID. I think we should make a league, and Egypt, I think, is ready now. We have a lot of exhibitions with the African League and with the African Bank. I think one is going to happen in November or in December, showing all the products that can be transformed in, or that could be traded in Africa. I think, as she said, I think we should look inside Africa and not outside Africa. Egypt is looking forward to exporting and to importing lots of goods. And I think this is the only way forward. And Egypt is very keen on the initiative of free trade. And I hope that it takes place. But I think with the issue of small SMEs, I think something like the African Development Bank, or there should be a league of African, an organization for African small SMEs throughout Africa, where it would take the knowledge and get people to know each other and export and import what is needed, and to be self-autonomous on our needs within Africa, instead of importing them from China or from the United States or from elsewhere. We also have in Egypt now, we in the Canal of Suez, we have established, as you know, we are passing, after the revolution, we passed through a lot of problems of development. Inclusive is also the problems of the stability of the country that we had. We're in the Canal of Suez now, we're making a huge area for construction, or for factories, for creating factories for Africa, to have Egypt as a hub for exporting all the goods from Egypt or elsewhere to be manufactured for Africa. So I hope that the free trade is about to take place as soon as possible, but for small SMEs, I think there's a lot that needs to be done pan-African, where there is a huge organization that would encourage and give also fiscal facilities for the informal sector to turn into a formal sector.
Oh, thank you so much for that response. And let me quickly go to Mrs. Ngover. You would agree that when we talk about the need for SMEs and free trade area, financial sector will have to play a huge role. I mean, if you want to expand businesses, expand infrastructure, financial system has to come into play. So how prepared do you think financial sector in Africa and in Nigeria are ready in order to also help to support SMEs in order to harness this benefit?
Very prepared and very ready. AFDB is there. I'm particularly proud of the AFC because the AFC has really turned infrastructure financing on its head. Previously, we needed financing from the West, as I like to call them, and all our projects were tied into all sorts of agreements that required us to either purchase the goods and it was just difficult for us to create homegrown infrastructure projects and then finance them. So the AFC has been fantastic, and I'm sorry about the noise, infrastructure, power, no lights. But in terms of the banks, we are very ready. We're very committed to supporting real sector growth in Nigeria and across Africa. And it's just about now putting in the work, getting it done.
Great. Thanks so much. And this will be my last question to our panelists this morning. In just 30 seconds, I just want you to reflect on what should we be looking forward to. Should it be the opportunities or the challenges for SMEs in Africa post-COVID-19? And I will start with Dr. Adaeze. Quick reflection.
Yes, I would say the opportunities. I'll say the opportunities. The opportunities are mind-blowing for the average young MSME who's never done anything digital, online. Suddenly, now has orders coming out of UK, US, Congo, Ghana for their little products that they were selling from their shop in Oshodi market. It is mind-blowing. There are a lot of benefits that's going to come out of this. I don't see any challenges. I believe that in every challenge, there's something good, there's something to be learned, and somebody somewhere is mining those values. Let's find those values and let's take advantage of them.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Mansour, your last word in terms of looking forward to opportunities or challenges for SMEs. Your microphone is mute again.
Just a second,
okay.
Sorry.
Yeah,
talking
we can
now,
hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The challenges are connecting free trade to digital economy and to small SMEs throughout Africa.
Thank you. Thanks. And what about Mrs.
Hello, Adedeji. Hello, Adedeji. Due to time constraint, that will be the most we can take for this session, please.
Thank you.
All right. On behalf of the founder, Chief Executive Officer of the African Economic Congress, Nancy Naji, we do want to sincerely say a big thank you to Olukayode Pitan, the Managing Director, Bank of Industry Nigeria, who was ably represented by the General Manager, Small and Business Enterprises, in person Dr. Rislanudeen, Mohammed. And also we do want to say thank you to Ngover Ihyembe Nwankwo, the Chairperson of Women in Management. I also want to say thank you to Yann Makosso Bayonne, Manager, Entrepreneur and Policy Analyst, Congolese, Brazzaville. Also a big thank you to Adaeze Udensi, Executive Director at Titan Trust Bank Limited. Also a special thank you to Rawya, Mansour, the founder, Ramsco, Egypt, and not forgetting our moderator, the Director of Education and Governance Research, CSEA, Dr. Adedeji, Adeniran. Not forgetting you. Yes, you. I'm talking about you. Either you're watching us via your TV set or via our online platform. We do want to say thank you for sticking with us, but we're not done.